The podcast host sent a confirmation that my show's administrative access had been transferred and my login was now listed as contributor. The support agent asked if I needed help coordinating with the new account owner. I met him because he fixed my sound. A live episode had gone wrong, echo clipping, the kind of mess listeners forgive once. He emailed after the stream with a clean timestamp note and a corrected file attached. No pitch, just the fix. He said he hated hearing good conversations buried under noise. I run my show alone. Research, recording, edits, bookings. I said thank you and asked what I owed. He said nothing. Said it took 10 minutes. After that, he showed up when something snagged. A guest's mic failed. A feed didn't push. An RSS update stalled. He'd message with the solution before I finished troubleshooting. He didn't ask to be added anywhere. He waited for me to offer. I did. First, it was narrow access. Upload permissions for emergencies. A shared calendar so he could see recording times. He didn't change anything. He just watched the shape of it. When I traveled, he handled releases so episodes still dropped on schedule. Sent screenshots when they went live. Clean. Quiet. The closeness came through rhythm. Through me not having to think about the parts that drained me. He learned my cadence. Where I paused. When I rushed. He flagged things gently, sent notes I could take or ignore. When a sponsor asked for a format change, he drafted a reply and left it unsent until I approved. I approved. The first night he stayed was after a late edit that ran into morning. He slept on the couch with his laptop closed, headphones still around his neck. Left before I woke, but the episode was already scheduled. After that, he kept a charger here. Not close, just a charger. When the hosting platform updated its dashboard, he walked me through it. Told me which toggles mattered, which didn't. He said they'd changed defaults and it was easy to break things accidentally. He said I could add him as a safeguard. I added him as admin. The sponsor invoices started routing through him because he responded faster. He forwarded everything. Summarized what mattered. When a brand asked for access to metrics, he handled the share. He said it saved time. The first thing I noticed and didn't stop was my inbox getting quieter. Fewer alerts. Fewer fires. He said he'd filtered notifications so I could focus on content. I liked that. The confirmation email from the host arrived while I was outlining an episode. Account roles updated. Ownership verified. I read it twice before it landed. I replied that there must be a mistake. The agent wrote back quickly and said the change had already been approved by the account owner. She asked if I wanted to be copied on future correspondence. I didn't answer her yet. My phone buzzed with a message from him. Uploads queued, art looks good, sponsors happy. He added a thumbs up like it was another solved problem. I sat there with the email open, cursor blinking, listening to the quiet where my alerts used to be, trying to remember when fixing the sound had turned into holding the feed. After that email, he didn't pull back. He closed the gap. He showed up with groceries and a plan for the week. Recording slots adjusted to account for a guest delay. A sponsor read moved to the mid-roll. He said he'd already cleared it. He said they trusted him. I asked about the account change. He said it was cosmetic. Platform language. He said, owner, just meant someone had to be responsible for billing and compliance. He said nothing had been taken from me. He said I was still the voice. I didn't argue. The next episode went out clean. He started sitting in during recordings. Off camera. Muted. Taking notes I didn't ask for. When I stumbled, he messaged a suggestion in real time. When a guest ran long, he cut the excess before I finished thanking them. He said it tightened the arc. It did. The closeness grew through shared nights. Late edits. Takeout on the floor. His hand on my shoulder when I leaned back to think. He never interrupted the work. He waited until I paused. He suggested a content calendar. Not a mandate. A draft. He'd already filled it with things I'd mentioned wanting to try. A series I'd joked about. A crossover I hadn't followed up on. He said it would help listeners feel continuity. I approved it. The platform started sending him reports I used to get. Weekly performance. Audience growth. Sponsor feedback. He forwarded highlights. Left out noise. When I asked for the full report, he said he'd send it later. Later came as a summary. I didn't press. One afternoon, a guest emailed me directly, apologizing for a scheduling mix-up. She said she'd already confirmed with him but hadn't heard back. I forwarded it to him without comment. He replied to both of us, smooth, apologetic, rescheduled. She thanked him. She didn't thank me. The first time I felt the shift in my body was small. I reached for the dashboard to upload a bonus clip and found the button missing. My permissions had changed. I assumed it was another update. He noticed me staring at the screen and said he'd streamlined roles. Said fewer hands reduced risk. Said I didn't need to touch the back end anymore. He said that was his job now. I laughed and said okay. That night, after we finished an episode, he played it back on speakers and watched my face instead of the waveform. He said it was one of my best. He said people followed consistency more than anything. He said we were building something real. He used we like it was obvious. The invoices landed in his inbox. He paid them. He sent me confirmations with short notes. Handled, cleared, good to go. When I asked about a payout timeline, he said platforms lagged. He said cash flow smoothed over cycles. He booked a meeting with the network I'd been circling for months. He said they wanted to talk. He sent me an agenda. He said he joined to handle technical questions so I could focus on vision. During the call, they addressed him first. He redirected once, then stopped. Afterward, he said it went well. He said they liked our structure. He said it helped that there was a single point of contact. He said chaos scared sponsors. The platform sent another notification. Roles reaffirmed. Access updated. My name was still there. Contributor. Creator. Host. Not owner. When I asked if that mattered, he said labels didn't change outcomes. He said outcomes were what people listened for. I believed him because the numbers kept climbing and the work felt lighter, and he was still sleeping beside me, still making coffee, still fixing the sound before I heard it break. I believed him because nothing had stopped yet. The silence in my inbox felt like progress. It didn't feel like erasure. The midpoint arrived as a promise. A network email to confirm onboarding steps. Not exploratory. Confirmed. My name was in the subject line. His name was in the body. They thanked him for the materials and asked when he'd like to proceed with the transfer. I forwarded it to him with a single question. He came over instead of answering. He said this was the window. He said momentum mattered. He said networks liked clarity. He said the show had outgrown a one-person structure, and they needed someone accountable on paper. He said it didn't change the voice. Protected it. He placed a document on the table between us. Not thick. Not dramatic. A platform authorization. Expanded admin rights. Monetization control. Temporary, he said. Just for onboarding. He said we could revert after everything stabilized. I read the first page. Recognized the language. It echoed what I'd already agreed to in pieces. He pointed to a paragraph about continuity and said that was standard. He didn't rush me. He went to make coffee. I signed while the kettle boiled. After that, things accelerated without friction. The network sent him contracts. He summarized terms, percentages, timelines. He told me which parts were flexible and which weren't. He said we were in a strong position. He said my focus should stay on content. He started approving things without checking first. Artwork tweaks, ad placements, cross-posting deals, all aligned with what I would have chosen. That alignment became evidence. The midpoint wasn't a fight. It was efficiency. My dashboard changed again. New tabs appeared I couldn't open. Buttons disappeared entirely. When I asked how to upload a bonus episode, he said he'd already scheduled it. He sent me the link after it went live. He began taking calls in the other room. Short ones. Controlled. When I asked what they were about, he said growth. He said nothing I needed to worry about. A payout landed in the account I used to check daily. Smaller than expected. I assumed timing. He said it was an advanced structure. He said distributions would even out once the network payments cleared. He said this was normal. He started using phrases like the property and the catalog. He didn't say my show anymore. He said the show like it was something separate from either of us. One night, I tried to log into the host directly. The password reset went to his email. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then closed the browser. The midpoint crystallized the next morning when the platform sent an automated alert. Ownership verified. Primary account holder him. Role update complete. I forwarded it to him immediately. He replied with a single line. This is what allows everything else to work. That afternoon, a guest asked me for my booking link. I sent it. It bounced. She wrote back saying she'd already coordinated with him and everything was set. She thanked me anyway. I sat there with my notes open, realizing I hadn't confirmed a guest myself in weeks. When I mentioned feeling out of the loop, he said loops were inefficient. He said trust meant not needing to see every step. He said I was still the face, still the voice, still essential. He said systems just needed one hand on the wheel. That night, after we recorded, he listened back with his eyes closed, said it was strong, said listeners would feel the confidence. He didn't ask if I wanted to publish it. He did it while I was in the shower. By the time I came back, the episode was already live. I thanked him. I didn't know what else to do. The consequences didn't arrive as conflict. They arrived as coordination. Invitations stopped coming to me directly. Press requests, guest pitches, partnership inquiries, all routed through him. I learned about them when he summarized outcomes. Declined, scheduled, deferred. He spoke in verbs that had already happened. When I tried to reschedule a recording myself, the calendar showed read-only. I assumed it was a sync issue. He said he'd locked it to prevent overlap. He said it was temporary. He said consistency mattered more than flexibility right now. A listener emailed to ask about a missing episode. I searched my drafts and found nothing. He said it had been pulled for repositioning. He said the network wanted a cleaner arc. He said it would be back later stronger. It wasn't. The platform sent a compliance notice addressed to him. I was copied after the greeting. He replied before I read it. He said it was routine. He said not to worry. The work felt different. Not worse. Narrower. I spoke. He shaped. When I pushed back on an edit, he listened, then explained why it had already gone live. He said momentum punished hesitation. He started referring to listeners as the audience and to sponsors as accounts. He said the show was entering a mature phase. He said maturity required structure. One evening, I noticed my name missing from the show description. Not erased. Moved. Host credit replaced with featuring. He said it tested better. He said it was reversible. I recorded anyway. During a network call, someone congratulated him on the acquisition. I didn't correct them. He didn't either. Afterward, he said words were imprecise. He said the substance was collaboration. That night, I asked how decisions were being made now. He said the framework was clear. He said clarity prevented burnout. He said he was absorbing pressure so I didn't have to. I let him stay. The next payout was smaller again. He said expenses had front-loaded. He said scaling required investment. He said the long view mattered. He sent me a spreadsheet with totals but no line items. I didn't ask for more. A guest canceled and emailed me to apologize for the confusion. She said she tried to reach him but hadn't heard back, then learned the slot was filled. I forwarded it to him. He replied with a brief explanation and scheduled her months out. She thanked him. She didn't reply to me. I tried to upload a short clip from my phone. The app blocked me. A banner said uploads were restricted to primary holders. I sent him a screenshot. He replied with a checkmark and said he'd posted it already. The first time I felt excluded from my own voice was subtle. A sentence trimmed without asking. A pause removed because it tested slow. He said pacing mattered more than breadth. When I asked if I could see the raw files, he said storage was centralized now. He said backups were safer that way. I nodded. Later that night, while he slept, I opened my laptop and searched my email for the authorization I'd signed. Found it. Read it end to end. The language was careful, broad, durable. The word temporary appeared once without a timeline. In the morning, I asked what would signal stability. He said growth. I asked what happened if growth slowed. He said that wasn't the direction things were moving. That afternoon, a listener posted that the show sounded different lately, more polished, less intimate. I read the comment twice and closed the app. When I recorded that evening, I spoke more carefully. He nodded from the other room, listening through headphones, adjusting levels I no longer touched. After we finished, he said it was strong. He said the audience would feel taken care of. He didn't ask how I felt. He scheduled the release and turned off the lights. I stayed seated, watching the waveform render on his screen, understanding that my voice still moved the show forward, even as the direction no longer belonged to me. The pressure showed up as helpful reminders. He began sending me notes before I asked questions. Sponsor expectations, network preferences, audience retention points. He framed them as guardrails, not rules. He said they kept things from slipping. I tried to book a guest on my own and found the booking form locked. It redirected to his email. I stared at it long enough to memorize the URL, then closed the tab. When I told him, he said it prevented double booking. He said I could always tell him who I wanted and he'd make it happen. I didn't test that. A listener reached out to thank him for an episode that resonated. She tagged him publicly. He liked the post and replied with a brief note about teamwork. My name wasn't mentioned. I didn't correct it. The network sent a quarterly update addressed to him. I was CC'd without greeting. The summary praised operational clarity and brand consistency. He forwarded it to me with a single line, "Good momentum." I asked for a full financial breakdown. Not accusatory, just a request. He said it was being reconciled. He said the network paid in batches. He said I didn't need to track every fluctuation. That night, I opened the spreadsheet he'd sent earlier and tried to trace the numbers backward. Links were view-only. Cells protected. I closed it and went to bed. He started using the phrase going forward. Going forward, releases would be batched. Going forward, edits would be tighter. Going forward, my role would stay focused on performance. He said it like reassurance. A guest canceled last minute and emailed me directly. She said she'd felt confused by the process and didn't want to be a problem. I replied kindly and copied him. He answered first, rescheduled without me, and thanked her for her flexibility. She replied to him only. The show description updated again. My bio shortened. His expanded. The artwork changed subtly, cleaner, more corporate. He said it tested better. He said we could revisit it later. Later didn't come. I asked when we would revisit ownership. He said that question assumed something had changed. He said nothing had been taken. He said ownership was a back-end distinction. He said listeners didn't care. I said I cared. He paused, then said caring didn't require control. He said trust meant letting go of mechanics. He said I was still essential. He said the show wouldn't exist without me. That night he fell asleep before I did. I opened my phone and searched for my name in the platform's help docs. Found it listed under contributors. I scrolled past it to the section on account recovery. It required verification from the primary holder. I locked the phone and stared at the ceiling. In the morning, an automated message arrived. Upcoming slate approved. Releases scheduled for the next 8 weeks. My calendar populated with recording blocks I hadn't agreed to. He made coffee and said we were in a good place. He said consistency would protect the audience. He said the hardest part was already done. I recorded that day because it was on the calendar. My voice sounded steady, familiar. I finished and waited for feedback. He nodded and said it was usable. Usable was the word. When the episode went live, my inbox stayed quiet. No alerts. No confirmations. Just a link he sent with a thumbs up. I listened to the first minute and recognized myself. I listened to the cut and felt how much space had been removed. I didn't say anything. I shut the laptop and went for a walk without my phone, knowing it would still publish without me. That was when I understood the shape of the loss. Not silence. Continuity. The termination notice arrived without ceremony. The platform sent it at dawn, automated, neutral. Count reassignment complete. Original creator listed as inactive. Contact your administrator for questions. I didn't forward it to him. I didn't need to. By the time I got out of the shower, the show's feed had refreshed. New artwork. New description. My name appeared once near the bottom under original voice. Past tense implied without being stated. He was already awake, dressed, phone in hand. He said the network had moved faster than expected. He said it was a good sign. He said the audience response justified it. I asked if he'd planned to tell me. He said he assumed I'd seen the email. I asked when my access would be restored. He said it wouldn't be. He said restoration implied reversal. He said reversals confused brands. He said clarity mattered now more than feelings. He said I could still record if I wanted. As a guest. He said listeners liked familiarity. I asked about the revenue. He said distributions were locked for the quarter. He said we could review after reconciliation. He said I'd get what was appropriate. Appropriate was the word he chose. Later that morning, my calendar cleared itself. All future recording blocks removed. A single invite remained. Guest appearance 30 minutes remote. I declined it. The network sent a press release that afternoon. His name first. The show described as evolving under new leadership. I read it once and closed it. When listeners asked where I'd gone, he replied publicly. He said I was focusing on new projects. He said it was amicable. He said I'd always be part of the show's DNA. I didn't comment. My login stopped working by evening. Password reset directed me to support. Support asked for verification from the primary account holder. I didn't ask him. I packed the microphone I still owned, the one I'd bought before him, wrapped it carefully and put it in the closet. The room felt larger without the setup. Quieter. That night, he texted to say he hoped I understood. He said this was how things scaled. He said I'd done the hard part and he'd done the necessary one. He added that he'd credited me in the archive. I didn't reply. The next episode went live without my voice. A new host. Polished. Confident. The format intact. The pauses filled. The rhythm familiar enough to pass. I listened for 30 seconds and stopped. The loss wasn't dramatic. No confrontation. No last argument. Just a continuity I was no longer inside. The feed kept updating. The numbers kept climbing. The show kept breathing without me. What remained was the quiet knowledge that intimacy had been the access point, trust the credential, and that my voice had been valuable right up until it no longer needed permission to exist.